Well, Robin, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Indeed, I'm delighted to be here and to see all of you here today, and I want to thank Chatham House very much indeed for hosting this event. Chatham House has a very highly regarded Africa program. It's highly regarded internationally as well as in the United Kingdom. They're also well regarded for their work with diaspora communities. So this is a very, very appropriate place to hold the consultation taking place today. And I'm grateful to all of you for coming today and to anyone who is watching us via live stream over the internet. And as Robin has explained, in just over 2 weeks' time, London will host a major international conference on Somalia, attended by heads of government and senior representatives from more than 50 countries and international organizations, including many heads of state, many foreign ministers, and the President and Prime Minister of Somalia itself. And we want to consult you about this. This is the purpose of this gathering as members of the Somali community here in Britain. As Robin has explained, I'm joined by our Minister for Africa, Henry Bellingham. He will take your questions later on, but he'll also tell me all about them. And together we want to explain to you what the London conference aims to do. We want to hear your views. We hope to inspire you to use your connections in Somalia to amplify the message that we care about what is happening in Somalia, and that now is the time for them to make their voices heard as well. And the results of our discussions will be published on the Foreign Office website and will feed into the conference itself. The London conference is an initiative launched by our Prime Minister, David Cameron. He is convinced, as I am, that we need a better international strategy to address Somalia's problems and to help its people, and that conditions in Somalia mean that the time is right for a determined new effort to help the country get properly onto its feet. A more stable Somalia is vital to our security, of course, here in Britain. It's essential for the stability of the Horn of Africa. Most of all, it's long overdue for the people of Somalia, who have endured 20 years of desperate suffering. Somalis suffer the most from the devastating effects of conflict and insecurity. But this also matters greatly to Britain, and we must make the argument to people here that our engagement with Somalia is not a luxury, it is a necessity. A lawless Somalia can be a base for international terrorist attacks. Planned attacks linked to networks in Somalia have been thwarted as far afield as Sweden and Australia. Lawlessness in Somalia is a threat to international shipping. 23,000 ships transit through the Gulf of Aden each year, a vital artery of the global economy. Nearly $1 trillion of trade to and from Europe alone traveled through the Gulf last year. So we must try to change the dynamic in Somalia from one that seemed for a long time to be one of inexorable decline to an upwards trajectory of gradually increasing stability and security, including human security. And this is a deliberately modest objective, a gradual, steady increase, because of course the scale of the challenge is phenomenal, but we must be under no illusions about how long it will take to achieve it. Our approach must be realistic and sober. We can't turn Somalia around with one conference, but we can bring countries together to give additional meaningful support and strengthen the mechanisms that implement it. We can send a signal to the people of Somalia that we will help them, and we can remind all those who willfully import and perpetuate violence that they should not underestimate our resolve. Speaking to you today is one part of our preparations for the conference. As many of you know, I made a fascinating visit to Somalia last week. This was the first visit by a British Foreign Secretary in 20 years to Somalia. The Secretary of State for International Development has visited twice in the last year. Henry Bellingham has visited other places in Somalia a few months ago, and I was proud to take with me a British ambassador, the first British ambassador. The first British ambassador to Somalia in 20 years, and in my presence he presented his credentials to the President, and I also myself dug the first bit of earth, bit of sand out of what will be the foundations of the embassy that we are establishing there in Mogadishu. And I hope these things will illustrate to other countries that it is time to have faith in the future of Somalia and will inspire them to do the same. And certainly you can get in Mogadishu now a little glimpse of how life could be. Of course, it's still a city with enormous problems, but amidst all the difficulties, amidst all the devastation, it is possible to see people going to markets. The airport road is busy. People were looking forward to, some of them, to going to the beach on Friday. There were elements of normal life. And that, of course, is what we want to see on a much bigger scale. And we've been in intensive discussions with other countries since we announced this conference. I spent the following day in Nairobi in discussions all day with the Kenyan government about the way forward. And tomorrow I will lead a debate in the House of Commons to seek the support of Parliament for the approach that we are taking to the conference. So we value what you have to say in this process. So we have excellent diplomats and experts on Somalia, but no one can possibly care as deeply about Somalia or know as much as you do. And we want to benefit from your experience and to keep the views and needs of Somalis at the forefront of our minds. You all have an incredibly important role to play, in my view, in the future of the country. The greatest asset of any country is its people, and I was struck last week in Mogadishu by the heroic individuals I met who are battling away to make a difference under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. Some of them, of course, feel a very strong connection to Britain. I met the mayor of Mogadishu, a former resident and community activist in Camden, and indeed he was a councillor in Islington Council, a Labour councillor, but I've forgiven him completely for that, since he's doing such a lot for Somalia. And he's forgiven me for being a Conservative, because I'm doing my best for Somalia as well. And so across all parties, this is something on which we can unite. And of course, there are many thousands of people who don't feel able to live in Somalia at present, or who have fled it under extremely difficult circumstances. We're very grateful for the contribution that many talented and highly educated Somalis make to our society here. But we recognize that many of them will also care deeply about seeing a stable and peaceful Somalia. We have the deepest sympathy for the fears and anxieties and hopes and dreams that they must have about their homeland and family members there, and the diaspora's great potential to play a part in Somalia's future. Somalis worldwide provide more than $1 billion in remittances back to Somalia each year, which is more than the whole international community provides in aid. And this is largely made up of people sharing their hard-won earnings with their families, or helping to pay teachers' salaries, to build schools and clinics, to dig wells, or to provide other much-needed assistance. So we know that Somalis around the world are part of the solution to the country's problems, and I thank you for the part that I'm sure many of you already play in that. And I want to set out now what specifically we hope to achieve by holding the London Conference on Somalia. First, let me say that we don't take on this task lightly or without humility. We're fully aware of what Somalia is today, a failed state that has been torn by war, famine, displacement, warlordism, and militias, much of whose territory is controlled by Al-Shabaab, a group that has publicly declared sympathy for Al-Qaeda's aims and methods. We know that the international community has not always got it right in the past, and that we can easily make mistakes, even when our intentions are good, if our understanding is not complete. We know that Somalia is a country where 1 million people have died through conflict over 20 years, where 43% of the people live on less than $1 a day, and where more people are dependent on emergency food aid than the entire populations of Edinburgh, Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds, and Liverpool all put together. It is so unstable that 750,000 of its people are refugees in neighbouring countries, and it's a country where the average life expectancy, 48 years, is roughly equivalent to the life expectancy of British people in the 19th century. In Mogadishu, I saw those encouraging things, but I also scarcely saw a building that was not scarred by bullet holes, alongside many utterly destroyed by fighting. And it's a country where in some areas piracy has become a way of earning a living. So the fact that we've not succeeded in turning Somalia around is not for a lack of effort by the international community over past years, including initiatives by the previous British government that we supported, but because the problems are so vast and the problems are so complex. We must always be clear-sighted and realistic in setting our expectations for what we can achieve. We want to see a Somalia that is stable, where the basic needs of its population are met, and that is able to begin to build its economy and its future. We can help get Somalia on its feet. We can't then do the running for it, but we can help get it on its feet. We can't dictate its future, nor can we provide the solution to its internal problems. Those are things that only Somalis can decide, although there are many ways that we can and will give them our assistance. But even against this sober background, we can see a glimmer of hope and a moment of opportunity for Somalia today. And there are three compelling reasons why the time is right for a major push on Somalia. The first is that Mogadishu, as I saw for myself, has been liberated by AMISOM forces under the skillful and courageous leadership of the Ugandan troops that make up the backbone of the African Union contingent in Somalia, along with brave troops from Burundi and Djibouti as well. And today, almost all of Mogadishu is controlled by AMISOM and the transitional federal government, making it possible to make some progress on governance in Somalia. The second is that these operations and successful counter-terrorism work are now putting pressure on al-Shabaab. We need to seize the opportunity to intensify this pressure and not allow them to regroup. Their guerrilla tactics inflict huge suffering on ordinary Somalis, and they harbour foreign extremists who use Somali territory to plan attacks outside the country, including the Kampala bombings of July 2010, and to impose a violent ideology which is alien to the vast majority of the people of Somalia. Related to this, the international community has made real progress in diminishing the pirate activity that helps to fuel Somalia's conflict, so that there have been no successful hijacks in the Gulf of Aden in recent months. The number of vessels and crews currently held by pirate groups is at its lowest since 2009. The third reason for optimism is that there is an opportunity to create a broader, more representative political arrangement when the transitional federal government's mandate expires this summer in August. This gives an opening to launch a broader political process that embraces all Somalis and that places emphasis on supporting regional governance as well as better and more representative government from the centre. This sense of a moment of opportunity was shared by the Somali leaders and citizens that I met, who welcomed Britain's engagement on this issue. We must make the most of the opportunities to support a more inclusive and representative political process, to help people return to Mogadishu and rebuild their lives there, to strengthen AMISOM, to introduce more effective arrangements to tackle piracy and terrorism, and to work better to support those pockets of stability that have emerged across the country. So this is what the Somalia Conference will aim to do. It will be different from previous conferences because it will put the needs of Somalis front and centre, not just our own security. And it will attempt to address the root causes of the conflict rather than just the symptoms. We have invited government and multilateral organizations that are active and influential on Somalia, representatives from Somalia, including the transitional federal institutions, the presidents of Puntland and Galmudug, representatives of ASWJ and Somaliland. We have secured senior attendance from the region, including Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda, as well as from the United States, Turkey, the UAE, Nigeria, Sweden, the United Nations, the African Union, and the European Union. And I'm delighted to say that Secretary Clinton and the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon are both attending the conference. As you would expect, we're still discussing with our partners the precise detail of the outcomes of the conference, so it is not too late to feed in your thoughts. But as things stand, we hope the conference will agree practical measures in 7 areas. First of all, on the political track, the current transitional institutions in Mogadishu run out in August. And after 7 years of minimal progress, they cannot be extended. The Somalia political process must become broader and more representative. This might involve a constitutional assembly drawn from all of Somalia's communities, not just Mogadishu. On security, secondly, African Union forces have pushed al-Shabaab out of Mogadishu, and Kenyan action has also put them on the back foot. But African forces have no regular funding for UN Security Council mandated actions. So the conference should agree a sustainable funding package for Africans willing to put lives on the line in order to help Somalia. The success stories in Somalia are so far in the regions. Puntland and Galmudug have established local peace deals and set up administrations. The conference should agree a coordinated international package of support to Somalia's regions that complements work on peace and stability at the national level as well. Piracy off the Somali coast is an affront to the rule of international law, and we have to break the piracy business cycle. So the conference should push for transfers of convicted pirates from regional states like the Seychelles to Somalia, maintain tough arrangements to catch and try and imprison pirates, and continue to develop regional maritime capacity within Somalia. We must make it harder for terrorists to operate in and out of Somalia. The conference should agree the areas we need to develop to disrupt terrorism across the region, including stopping the movement of terrorists to and from Somalia, disrupting the flow of their finances, and delivering effective intelligence gathering, investigation, and criminal prosecution. And on the humanitarian front, the conference provides an opportunity to highlight the need for donors to continue to respond generously and on the basis of need, to invest more in people building their livelihoods and basic social services, and to work towards greater consensus on more durable solutions for refugees. And of course, we want London to be the start, not the end of this new process. So we want the conference to agree how we handle Somalia issues in the future in the international community, with a revitalized international contact group, with United Nations and African leadership, and with more countries deploying diplomats and staff into Somalia, not just basing themselves in Kenya. These are all practical but meaningful steps which we believe will have an impact on the ground. And we hope to emerge from the London conference with a stronger common understanding of the way forward and a renewed political commitment for the long haul. I'm told there is a Somali proverb that says, "Alone I can travel fast, but together we can travel far." Well, this seems to me to be an appropriate and encouraging sentiment to guide our conference. And as I said at the outset, Britain's engagement with Somalia is not a sudden thing, it is not a flash in the pan. This will endure. We are going to carry on as we have now set out. I mentioned how we've appointed a new ambassador. We're going to continue our intensive diplomatic work on Somalia over the coming months and indeed years. We will continue to be an active member of international groupings on Somalia, including the International Contact Group, and we will build up stronger bilateral relations. Through our Department for International Development, Britain is providing £250 million in development support over the next 4 years, working on longer-term programs to address the underlying causes of poverty and conflict. And we hope to help Somalis take control of their lives and rebuild their communities and livelihoods. This means working with local and regional governments, as I've said, like Puntland, that Andrew Mitchell, the International Development Secretary, visited last month, where we will help build democratic institutions that can respond to the needs of their citizens, help the police and justice systems work so that people can feel more secure, and increase access to healthcare, education, and jobs, which we recognize to be absolutely critical for Somalis. We want to help ensure that last year's tragic humanitarian crisis, which claimed between 50 and 100,000 lives, half of them children, is never repeated. Britain has been one of the most generous donors to the relief effort. We have provided £128 million to the relief effort across the Horn of Africa, including £58 million for Somalia alone, in addition to the development programme I spoke about a moment ago, and on top of the £72 million raised by the Disasters Emergency Committee from people here in Britain. British aid has reached over 1 million vulnerable people, saved the lives of thousands, and contributed to lifting 500,000 people out of famine. So we're proud of the role that we play and of the example that we set to others. For example, the UK also contributes 14% of all European Union spending in and on Somalia, including on development and humanitarian aid. We're part of all 3 international naval operations in the waters around Somalia, including providing the operational headquarters in Northwood, near London, for the European Naval Mission Operation Atalanta. So I hope you will welcome this work, because Britain takes this work extremely seriously, as you can gather. And I hope you will also welcome our renewed commitment to a stable and peaceful Somalia, and that we can work together to help make this a reality. There can be fewer countries in the world where an investment in peace and security is more desperately needed, or where international effort can more worthily be devoted. By dedicating effort to Somalia today, we are not only helping the people of that long-suffering country, but for British people, we're investing in our own long-term security and prosperity as well, bringing benefits to Britain and to Somalia. That is our hope, and that, as you can gather, is what we're working very hard to help bring about. Thank you very much indeed.